Mic lock button is on. Double tap to lock mic off. Use mic.
Hi guys, and welcome to the Underground series, episode 2. And I thought I was going to leave this later on down the series, but I think episode 3 will follow from episode 1, and episode 4 will follow up from episode 2. But anyways, so that's how we'll do it. I thought that I would describe about underground culture and just general blathering on. And I might pause this just to go off and do some general research to keep this video going. So this might be a slightly longer video than so on, but yeah, we're going to sort of leave a lot of stuff out, and we're going to be rewinding, fast forwarding through time, obviously. So first of all, I want to talk about underground media as a whole. And so on. And the only way to talk about underground culture, I guess, is to, explain about people who are usually against things and normally rebelling. But what you rebel against is something that you have to believe in personally. And I believe in stopping abuse, because all abuse must be stopped. It's my personal belief, and it's something that I would protest against. But I have things that I'm protesting against. Censorship in art should be, if people create something, film, books, music, whatever, there should be no censorship at all. There should be, we don't have total freedom of speech because of all what's going on, and that will lead to my spiritual warfare video, which I'm only going to make one video of in this series because I don't want to blather on too much about it, and I've not finished the script for it yet, so it'll take time. And I'm pretty slow on these things, so yeah, you guys just got to be patient with me. But anyways, history lesson. So first of all, why did I want to be underground? Well, I guess I was fed up of mainstream media. I had dropped out of college by that point, and I was fed up with employers. I was fed up with colleges. I was fed up playing cat and mouse with universities. That I will leave to another video. So maybe I'll talk about that more in depth in a Q&A video. But I was sick and tired of that. And I was tired more than sick of it, really. I had kind of, I'd gone to Christopher Grange one day a week to learn independence, living skills, and I was just angry at a lot of things. I was angry with the system. I was angry with such and such a thing, and where was my, I wanted to, basically, I wasn't holding down a job where I got paid money. By the way, if my parents are watching this, maybe, maybe this is something that, I don't know, you can watch in full in depth and everything, and maybe, yeah, but I'm taking you guys back to 2012. Was it 2012? Yeah, no, it wasn't. It was, to 2012 it was. And I kind of had enough of the mainstream. I'd had enough of... I just had enough of everything, really. So, in 2013, I hadn't announced that I was going to be underground until about December 2013. And we were using it as a cool word. But we thought, well, what do these cool words actually mean? I'd heard things on television about the underground. And when I heard things on the telly about it, they were normally talking about the London Underground. But they weren't talking about the underground. They weren't talking about the underground. They weren't talking about underground media. And every time on the radio you heard about underground music scene, underground film, underground television, underground this, underground that. And I just thought, well, wouldn't it be cool to be actually underground and literally, these days, you're not on proper underground person unless you've turned your back on social media. But I guess once you're logged into it and you're seeing the notifications every day. And of course there was what clothing would you wear? Well, I was wearing hoodies and jeans. I still wear hoodie and jeans. The image has not changed there. Is that council house clothing? I don't know. What is council house clothing? And this is where we're going to talk conformity, but I'm going to leave that till later on because we're going to have a history lesson first. So, before we delve into that, it's just the years went by and I delved into the underground and there's so much information that I've hoarded over the years. But the main question that I'm still asking, remember in the previous video I said that there are some questions that are left unanswered, and sometimes when you found the answer to the question, it's not done. It's not done with. Once you've found the definition, or when you found something, there's still an unanswered question. It's like the question is still unanswered. You still got to keep asking the question. And it sounds like a university question. What is underground? What would it be like to live underground? What is underground living? What's an underground lifestyle? What is, all of this. So, maybe in the comments you guys can answer, but I might even put the question at other platforms, but still, underground is not, when people give me the answer, I understand it's secretive and hushed up and against this and against that and anti this and anti that. But there's a lot more to do with the underground that I do understand and will explain further on in the video. And this is where I'm going to give you guys a history lesson. So, when we go back to the 50s and the 60s, we go back to a very conformed Britain, which today is still conformed. And whether we ruled the waves or not is something that I probably don't care about. Because, what we took on was, and everybody started shoving things under the carpet that happened during the Second World War, so we could make Britain look like this amazing place. You look at all the propaganda films from, after the war, it was like, oh, we didn't do that. Women cleaned up the homes and blah, 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 and we was fantastic. We're wonderful. Britain. Anyway, you see those propaganda films and the posh voice and all that kind of thing. But first of all, we have to look to people like Lord Warthaw. Can't pronounce his name properly, but we have to look back to him first of all. And it may be like going to Thomas Edison, who invented the light bulb, but we have to go this far back so people can understand. In the 60s and 70s, or post-war, before that, we had Lord Warthaw, who was a spy, and he had a radio station, and he was basically giving out information, and you can look up to people like Lord Warthaw for basically how the mainstream were portrayed by the mainstream people, but they were also misdirected by other people. Quite like today. Quite like what's going on today, but yeah. So then we had, in the 50s and 60s, we had, after the war, in the 1950s, kids were starting to dress in posh suits and earning their own pocket money and getting jobs and doing their parents proud, basically, until the rock and roll era. And the rock and roll era started in the late 50s. This is like what I said, with the kids earning their own pocket money and getting their jobs and stuff. Teenagers started to become, this rising generation of the teenager, and the freedom that the teenagers had. They had a lot of freedom. Records started coming out, before that. Well, before rock and roll, you had jazz. You had the beatnik era. You had Burroughs, you had Ginsberg, you had Jack Kerouac. They set a stepping stone for what was to come. You had Robbie Coltrane, you had all of that. Then the 60s happened, and in 1967 you had the Summer of Love. In that time, you had the hippies having a good time partying, where the rockers were out there trying to look for. You had the hippies that were looking for a new civilization, where the rockers
10:05 a.m.
were not. Then there was an industrialized culture which was always looking into the future and going one step ahead. There were gurus who were into meditation, and people were out selling drugs in 1967. There were priests and preachers from all different corners preaching to the youth of a new tomorrow. There were bands like the Stones and the Beatles. The Beatles talking about a new peace, which John Lennon was preaching out to people. Also in 1967, we had people like Janis Joplin, Jefferson Airplane, Bob Dylan, and so on. And Bob Dylan was nearly a beatnik at one point, but decided that poetry was more for galleries and museums, so he decided to carry on recording. In the late 60s, bands like Zeppelin, Eric Clapton, Cream, and all these bands were popping up from the woodwork. Not only that, but there was a new freedom coming out into the woodwork. Which would soon be popularized in the later 60s. Also, there was spiritualized movements that people were dabbling into. And not only there was spiritualization, but there was meditation and a brand new freedom. In the 70s, brand new records came out, and also the War of Vietnam aroused. Also in the 70s, we had 3-day weeks, strikes, and different classes of people. You had the lower class looking up to the middle and upper class. And this happened in the music scene too. And this is where punk aroused. Heavy metal and punk aroused. After punk, we had the 1980s, where synthesizers were becoming more affordable. And synthesizers had been around since the 60s or 70s. But unfortunately, people could not afford synthesizers. Instead, they used tape machines to create an avant-garde music called musique concrète, which was music which was found sound. In the 80s, big reel-to-reel tape recorders were becoming very expensive, and also studios' time was really hard to come by. Not like today, where you can go into a studio for about 50 quid. Getting into a studio was very difficult, and buying that time was even harder. You had to be a T-boy to buy your way into the studio, or be a recording engineer. You had to engineer on somebody else's work, which is very difficult to do today. And the industry doesn't stand any chances. Today either. Also, going back to the 60s, people were playing around with meddling with different spiritualizations. So you had like the Ouija board as a board game and all that kind of thing. Strange things happened. Moving back to the 80s, where recording was expensive, there were kids in their bedrooms writing their own music. Hence the home computer, which became affordable. Things like the ZX Spectrum and the Commodore C64 became more affordable, and music was a lot more easier to write on. MIDI came out in 1987, but unfortunately the Yamaha DX7 was very unaffordable. And music did not change till 1988, where the rave scene boomed up and brand new music came out as warehouse music. Or as we know it today, house music, where all the really cool records came out. Unfortunately, it was all acid house records, where people were using cheap bass machines and drum machines, because the all the really good samplers that were being used were really expensive to get hold of, and you had to be either Peter Gabriel or Kate Bush to own one of those things. In the late 80s and early 90s, samplers were becoming more affordable. So were synthesizers and drum machines, because of the birth of house music. And DJs were popping up from literally nowhere. Also in the late 80s and early 90s in Chicago was the birth of techno music. Techno music using forms of acid house and also other forms of disco music. And also they were sampling people like Larry Levance, James Brown, Frank Knuckles. Everybody was in on this. And you had producers like Jeff Mills, and also there was people coming out of the hip-hop boom too. So it was a new generation again in the 90s. And in the 90s we had people that wanted to be free again, but again things just happened very, very differently, very strangely. And we fast forward to today where we are in a brand new war yet again. So rewinding to the 80s where you had AIDS was on the rise and people didn't know what to do. They called it grid. There were bands, certain bands were putting it out there. The song Tempted Love and Relax were both written about AIDS. However, I think Tempted Love is much more stronger song than Relax. Because even though that song is about AIDS, it's not. The message wasn't as strong as Soft Cell's Tempted Love, and the music video was even stronger. And it was that the message in the song was so strong that the music video was banned in America. And free speech is still out there to today, and it's like certain bands have been banned from even playing their music due to, like, you even have bands like the Plastic People of the Universe, which they had their instruments confiscated for not just playing loud but also expressing their freedom. And I think a friend of Frank Zappa's and somebody from the Velvet Underground got them out, if I remember rightly. So now we fast forward to today, where it's all plastic music and talent shows and TikTokers and throwaway society, and it's all face masks and goodness knows what, and the environment and pollution and whatever you read today. Yet no one is actually reading into what they truly believe. And so when I start talking about planets and aliens and all the stuff that we'll be talking about other stuff too, about portals, robots, artificial intelligence and stuff like that. But we'll only be touching on that for brief. We'll only be touching on those subjects very, very briefly. And yeah, so this video, ladies and gentlemen, it's not sponsored by anybody. We don't want these videos to be sponsored. That's not the crack. This is educational content. And in part 3, we'll be going back to part 1. We'll be making some notes. I've not made some notes from that video yet, so I need to make some notes from that video, so I can talk more on what I discussed in part 1 and part 3. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is underground. Oh, I haven't discussed about the mainstream, have I? The mainstream, which is the media that you read today, the media, everything that's read in the news. You only need to open a paper and you read exactly what Boris Johnson's doing or not doing. But mainstream people don't read in between the lines, and they will not question the papers. They'll not question anything. They won't even question what they read in the Bible. They won't even question what's being, and kids, when the things you're being taught at school, question your teachers, question your peers, question anybody. We're taught at school to have, you're only taught so much because they don't want you to know so much. But that's not, the way it should be is, if you got a question, bloody ask it, because then you'll have the knowledge of at least knowing. Because, kids today are going to find it anyway. It's not like the old days where you have to literally go crawling around for a book or magazine where you'd find something. And the internet's not full of answers, unfortunately. It's not one of those things. And I am not a guru, so I'm not full of answers either. But we're going to be doing videos on space and the Stephen Hawking type videos. So look forward to those types of videos. In part 4 and 5, we'll be discussing a bit more sort of underground press and what you can hope, and just lots of non-mainstream stuff. And just about different industries in total. There is a rant video in part 6 when we talk about, the rant video is going to come not in this series, because I don't want the rant video to be in this series, but I'm going to do a rant video on a certain educational rant video on, again, something that I completely believe in. And when you guys go and protest in what you believe in. Always protest in what you believe in. Don't protest in what you don't believe in, because that's what the mainstream want. Hence why there are things I disagree with, and the things I strongly disagree with. The things I strongly disagree with are the things that I will believe in going against, or literally rebelling against. And I just think that we should stand up and argue against the things that we strongly disagree with. The things that we strongly agree with are also things that we should believe in those two things too. So it's things you strongly agree with and things you strongly disagree with. you know, don't just agree with everything. You know, people read it and they'll go, "Oh yes, I agree," and that's the fashionable thing. You've got to agree with everything. Well, you know, what's you know, I mean, what's the whole point? Why can't you just disagree with something? Anyway, that's this video. It's gone on for quite a while. I was going to pause it and stuff, but I think I'm trying to find it. Right, okay. Let me just I tell you what. I'll
Artist name. Boss job. Mic trigger. Button. Mic lock. Finish recording. Button.
So that's just a little bit of literature for you to give you a sort of a rough insight into the history of underground and how people were brought in a conformed world or conformed society where people should really not focus on conforming to society or the ways of this world or technically being civilized. And I've found a couple of screenshots on some underground press, and this is stuff that you won't find in the history books on how like all these nonconformists were and stuff. And I'll do another video on how disgusting it is to conform to society in another video. But this just gives you like above ground and underground kind of thing. And here's just a couple of screenshots of things to look at, and maybe you can check these out for yourselves. But here's just some couple of things that you might want to have a bit of a read of.
Stop recording video.
So here's a question that I want to sort of take away with you is, do you think that to be underground, it means to be more independent, instead of depending on the likes of mainstream and corporate media? Or does underground mean something entirely different? And I'm going to leave that for another video, because this video's gone, one, it's gone long enough, and two, I kind of wanted to finish on an open-ended thing. But anyways, so if you like this video, please go ahead and hit the like, smash the like button. It'd be great, and so on. I've worked a little bit harder on this video than I would normally on any other video, so yeah. I really hope you guys have enjoyed it, as always.
Stop recording video.